welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson,
just in time.
Is this crossover going to prove that Loaxana Troy is a good character?
Alan Seiler,
Loaxana Troy does not need any proof that she's a good character. Thank you.
and Veronica Daschel.
Hi.
And we're joined by a special guest this week from Discussing Trek, Clarence Brown. Welcome back to the show, Clarence.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me here. Glad to be here. I'm the one carrying Loaxana's bags. That's me.
No way.
So in
So you
case
speak once every 10 episodes.
Right.
in case the theme is not lost, this is our crossover episode, and we have our own crossover. Clarence is crossing over from Discussing Trek into EST.
Right.
Yes.
That's
glad to be here.
exciting.
Yeah.
It's always such a pleasure to have you with us, dude. You're so awesome.
Again, thanks for inviting me, and can't wait to chop it up with you guys.
All right.
All right, before we get into it, we've got a couple bit of news. They had just made some Star Trek Day announcements just today. So I've got the news here that there's going to be a Star Trek Day streaming special hosted by Jerry O'Connell. And they say, a salute to the franchise. The special program will include segments that look back at memorable moments over the past 57 years, commemorate 50 years of Star Trek animation, pay tribute to Star Trek Discovery ahead of its final season, provide an exclusive sneak peek from the upcoming 4th season of Star Trek Lower Decks, and commemorate many other moments that highlight Star Trek's legacy. And there's a little teaser with Jerry O'Connell, which, as someone who grew up loving Sliders, I'm just thrilled that Jerry O'Connell, I said growing up, I was a teenager, but still, I love Sliders, and I'm thrilled that Jerry O'Connell's a Star Trek character now.
I love sliders too, especially like beef ones. I like chicken ones too.
I go
All right,
back to
I'll see myself out.
Right.
I
Well,
go back to when
someone-
Jerry. I'm sorry. I go back to when Jerry O'Connell played the superhero back when
My
he was a
Secret
kid.
Identity.
My Secret Identity.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So it is amazing to think about him coming forward. He's the last person I would have thought of for Star Trek Day.
Right. And then we had some news about we talked before on the show about the animation celebration and Lower Decks theater screenings. And they say this Star Trek Day commemorates the 50th anniversary with an evening of cartoon comedy, including 4 specially selected episodes of the hit animated series Star Trek Lower Decks. Fans can attend these exclusive free promotional screenings and experience the brand new season of Star Trek Lower Decks on the big screen. The day is jam-packed with sneak peeks and surprises, free concessions, giveaways, and more. This is a can't-miss event for longtime fans of Star Trek and adult animation across the U.S., Canada, and the U.K.
And by across America, they mean in like 4 different select cities.
Right.
Yes.
Like, wow.
Nothing in the South. The
Nothing
closest
in
thing
the
is
South.
Dallas, Texas.
Right.
Which makes
Yeah.
no sense because I mentioned in our Facebook group, I grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and the science fiction credentials of Atlanta are greater. I don't know why we got
Yeah.
skipped.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the other hand, I mean, with it being a free screening again, then I would feel like I have to try to get in, and it was such a headache the last time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'll watch it on TV. I would love to go see it in theater, but I don't want
I
to
want
go
the
through.
swag. That's all I want.
Yeah, that would be nice, but I
I
don't want
want
to
free concessions.
Right? We didn't get well, I guess we get free popcorn, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't want to jump through all the hoops that we would jump through the last time. I wish they would just put it in theaters and just charge me
Yeah.
$10 to go see it. I would go see
I,
it.
exactly. That's what Doctor Who used to do, like for
Right.
years when they would do like big premieres, whether
So
it be for a
specials,
DVD release or for a new season launch. They would do that, and they would charge like a regular ticket amount, and that's a revenue stream.
Mhm.
And I'm very appreciative of them willing to do this free event, but I'm totally willing to buy a ticket to this. I mean, I will
I'd
give
rather
you my
have
money.
the accessibility and not get the free stuff than not be able to do it at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And last time I feel like I paid for it in time and headache. What I didn't pay for in money.
There you go.
We also discussed in our Facebook group about the glaring lack of Prodigy being mentioned in all this.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a celebration of Star Trek animation, and 1/3 of the Star Trek animated series are not being represented.
Paramount, the place for all themed Trek, except for Prodigy.
Almost.
Yes. It's been erased from history.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Unless we need a
wild.
tax write-off.
Yes.
All right. Well, yeah. And on that note, like hashtag save Star Trek Prodigy. So,
Right on.
Yes.
all right, Keith, you got some This Week in Trek this week?
Yeah, a couple of real quick ones. This first one is for Veronica. On the 20th of August, 1987, first day of filming for this race was taking place. This was the new big bad race for the next generation. You know where we're going.
Well, it's the short bad race.
Yes. This was the episode, The Last Outpost, and this was the first day of filming and costuming for the Ferengi, who were written as being the big bad, the new Klingons, the new Romulans for the TNG crew. And they showed up with furry costumes and electro whips. And they crouched. Yeah, it didn't work too well. And they crouched in really strange, over-the-top villainous things, and they made strange. It's almost like they were working on their Gollum impersonations.
Yes.
It did not work.
Well, here's the thing, though. You know, the first episode that we saw, you know, they portrayed themselves as being big, larger than life things because they would magnify what they show on your view screen. But then when you actually meet them, they, even though they're smaller in stature, they still could have been imposing, but they played them off like a little comedy, like a pack of rats running around. And I thought that was a real, like, the first time you introduce a new villain, don't undermine them in the very same episode.
Right.
Yes.
They ruined the Ferengi, and thank goodness for DS9 for rehabilitating what should have been all along a really, really strong and interesting race.
Yeah, I agreed, Alan. And not to speak ill of the great bird of the galaxy, but people know that Gene Roddenberry was, well, let's just say he was fond of the ladies. And one of the unfortunate things with the Ferengi was the first time they saw a human female, which was Natasha Yar. They started that whole thing about you force your women to wear clothes. So that became an unfortunate thing that, as you said, Alan, they corrected finally in Deep Space Nine in a way that was logical, given what they laid out for them.
Yeah, if they had stayed that way, then I would have a problem with that. But I like that gave them an opportunity to grow the Ferengi and the Ferengi culture and allow an evolution over the course of the years that we watched them.
Absolutely.
How was the reaction to that when it came out for somebody who was watching it when it was actually airing in the 80s? Was the reaction to the Ferengi bad?
Well, kind of. I will say, and there was no internet at the time, and so I'm only judging by me and the group of friends that I watched the show with. You first get that mention of them in the very first episode, and they're mentioned kind of like this shady threat.
Yes.
The Ferengi are out there somewhere, and you're like, ooh, who are these Ferengi? And then you finally see them in The Last Outpost, and they seem imposing. And then at the end, when they're just running around like, I don't know, man, I was like,
Ferengi.
What? But I'll tell you, another thing is, though, I really, really liked the laser whip thingy.
Oh yeah, so 80s.
Yeah, they were a joke. I was watching from the first premiere in TNG, and they were a joke. And as Alan said, with no internet, the conversations for me were in the comic book shop, and everybody was laughing about those goofy aliens with the the fur and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm next to another quick one. This is just a legacy thing. On the 22nd of August, 1967, and it's amazing. We talk all the time. Who knew? A couple of things that were unusual. This was a spec script that came in from somebody not associated with Star Trek. And who knew 1967 was the first day of filming on The Trouble with Tribbles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Ironically, an episode that Gene Roddenberry kind of sort of hated because Gene Roddenberry didn't believe that Star Trek should have humor in it. And there you go.
He was wrong.
Well, creators know their property better than anyone, but that doesn't mean that they're right about everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's funny, some of the criticisms that people have had, or that Gene Roddenberry had of Star Trek, the original series season 2, I've heard people of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, that there's too many gimmick episodes, too many comedic episodes, too many, let's get to the real serious Star Trek. So, I mean, that 50 years later, 57, 56 years later, people are still having that debate with how silly should it be, how serious should it be.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
agreed.
Yeah,
A
absolutely.
related comment really quickly. I
Uh-huh.
think based on previous comments that this is Dan Leckie, who's
Mhm.
commenting all the way from Scotland. And he says the introduction of the Ferengi being mentioned first before being seen was sort of a parallel with how the Ferengi mentioned the Dominion first in DS9 before the Dominion ever showed up. So that's a really good point. I had never really thought about that before.
Yeah, I would
That's
say the
very
Dominion
true.
had a better payoff.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
A little bit.
We should do a show one day for the lamest big bads in Star Trek, even if it's one-off, because there'll be a fight between the first Ferengi and the Kazon. from
Thank you.
Voyager.
Kazon will take it because they're dumb.
Yes.
Yeah, and the last thing this week is kind of a sad note because who knew? Jonathan Frakes said, "Who knew?" On the 23rd of August, 2021, not all that long ago, final filming on what people thought was the fourth of 6 or 7 seasons was completed, and that was Star Trek Discovery.
Okay.
Mhm.
They wrapped season 4, and back in the day, as the people remember, Star Trek series other than Enterprise used to last 7 seasons. I've read interviews with Jonathan Frakes recently and Sonequa Martin Green, who were saying, who knew that the 5th season was going to be their last season. So this is a bittersweet thing looking back. They wrapped filming on that 4th season, thinking more to come, and only one to come.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's a good reminder that, I mean, nothing's guaranteed. You know, it seems like Star Trek's on top of the world, and then it's not. You know, the bean counters will come with a different idea.
Yeah, and that's this week in Trek history.
All right. Well, if you're listening to the audio podcast, we'll take a quick break right here and promote a fellow ESO Network podcast show. But don't go away, because when we come back, we're going to be talking about the great crossovers in Star Trek history. So stay right there. And then if you're watching with us live, we're going to continue on. I don't guess we need a spoiler warning this week.
No.
No, I think everything we're talking about is pretty old.
Yeah.
Well, actually, maybe a new. We'll say some potential spoilers for the latest seasons of like Strange New Worlds and Picard. But if you're up to date with the episodes that have come out, then you should be fine. Because we're talking about the great crossovers in Star Trek. And Alan, you sort of spearheaded this. You want to kick it off?
Yeah. So based on season 3 of Picard and that incredibly wonderful episode of Strange New Worlds, where we had 4 characters from Lower Decks show up, 2 of which crossed over into live action right on the ship, right there interacting with our favorite Strange New Worlds characters. I thought it'd be fun to look back at all the times that Star Trek has done these kind of crossovers. And we've had tons of them, and all the way back to Encounter at Farpoint. And that's twice that episode has come up in the first 10 minutes of our show. That's unusual. And with McCoy coming on Enterprise D, and that was basically the handing of the torch from the old guard to the new guard.
Yeah.
And giving this new show the heave-ho, giving it the launch that it deserved. And ever since then, we've had just a ton of crossovers on every series.
Right.
So I thought it'd be fun to kind of explore some of that stuff and talk about our favorites. And we did a poll on our Facebook page, and we are going to do a countdown of the top 11 results, because there were some ties down at the bottom, and so we have to do 11 instead of 10.
Well, do we want to go through them and by the countdown, or do we want to jump out with some favorites? What do you think we should do?
That's we can do the countdown and like each one and talk about
Give our opinions as we go.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe list some favorites we have if we have some.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't need to spend too much time on the countdown, but we'll just do reactions to each one.
Okay.
Because there's some surprises in this, I will say. So coming in at number 11, because we had a 3-way tie at the bottom, and I didn't know which one I should leave out. So coming in at number 11 is Star Trek Generations, another big handover from the original series movies to the Next Generation movies, and we have Kirk and bridge crew showing up in this new movie.
Yeah. And we've talked about Generations quite a bit. Clarence, what did you think about Generations?
Very much enjoyable. I loved seeing Guinan play a pivotal role in that movie. Now, I know there's a lot of flack about what actually happened to Kirk at the end of the movie. So I don't know how, people feel about that, but it felt kind of weird. It felt like it was almost too much of a rush to get rid of the old and move on to the new. But it was a very well done passing of the baton to a new generation. So yeah, I thought it was a great movie.
Yeah.
I would say the only weak part about it was, well, first of all, it just seemed like a big TV episode. It didn't seem movie scale to me. But
Okay.
when you call your big threatening anomaly the Ribbon, no, you better come up with a better name than that. I'm
the
sorry.
the Nexus, the Ribbon.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Go ahead.
Charles.
No, go ahead.
I thought it was an okay movie. I think that the problem with a character like Kirk is it's very hard to do an ending for an iconic hero. Sometimes they fade off in the distance and you don't know what happens to them. Sometimes you don't write their ending. I don't know that killing Kirk, first off, I don't think they should have killed Kirk, but I don't know that killing Kirk off was going to satisfy anybody, maybe, unless he blew up in the ship. I thought his death was underwhelming. And then, of course, people point out that, well, given what the Nexus was, you kind of should have been able to resurrect Kirk or prevent him from dying, blah, 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 all that kind of thing. So it was okay. I actually, strangely, the scene I remember, this is crazy, the scene I remember most from that movie is when William Shatner and Patrick Stewart were riding horses together.
Right.
Because there was just something about those two actors on screen together like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I've said before, I was like 13, 14 when this movie came out. I loved it. It was epic for a young Star Trek nerd. And there's Kirk and Picard together on screen.
Yeah.
And it's fitting because Picard can't handle Soren, but then Kirk comes in and the old fashioned 23rd century put up your dukes.
That's right, man.
Picard's a negotiator. You need Kirk to get in there and handle the fist fight.
The way you said that, Charles, now I'm thinking of the Cowardly Lion. When you said put up your dukes, and I'm saying, come on.
Put them on. Our Facebook user, who I still think is Dan Leckie, but I'm not entirely sure, says the first draft script of Generations makes for fascinating reading as it includes Spock and McCoy at the start.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah. And you could tell watching the movie that they just gave their lines to Scotty and Chekhov.
Right.
Especially when you get Scotty reading off the techno babble and Chekhov saying, you just become nurses. Let's go. Like that. They didn't even try changing that dialogue.
Michael Phillips jumps in and says, one thing I really love about Generations is the soundtrack. I think it's very beautiful, melancholy, and understated, but it doesn't come up much as a fan favorite. That's a great point. I love it too. And it is understated, and it's not one that really sticks out in my head as like a favorite score, but it is. It's really nice.
It is. And that was back when Star Trek movies had their own themes. And then the most recent films, they seem like they go with the same themes and then build on them,
Yeah.
Right.
Now, what do you guys think about the story element to bring this crossover together? I mean, each of these are going to have that in some form, maybe, but here with the Nexus, kind of, if you're a Star Wars fan, world between worlds type thing, way to bridge the time gap. I thought it was decent, decently done.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. It's a way for Kirk to be in the present day, in the 24th century. And I remember there was interviews beforehand when they're talking about, well, it's not time travel, it's something new. Time travel.
There's no way around that.
Right.
It's time travel by riding the Nexus.
Yeah.
Like a bucking bronco.
The visual.
All right. Any last thoughts about Generations?
Nope. I'm ready for number 10.
All right. Well, our Facebook user, Dan Leckie, who I now have been confirmed that it is him, asked, is Prodigy episode Kobayashi in the poll? Well, I have a great news for you. It comes in at number 10.
Hey.
Prodigy Kobayashi, where Dal is taking the Kobayashi Maru. He's trying to learn how to be a starship captain, and he gets help from holograms of past Star Trek dignitaries. Spock, Uhura, Scotty, Crusher, and Odo.
Yeah. That was just cool.
Let's talk about that one, man. That was when you're watching the show for the first time, that was a surprise.
Oh yeah. And if you're very familiar with the episodes that they pulled the audio clips from, it's a little distracting, but I think it works because it's on the holodeck. If it was like Ambassador Spock showed up and he was reading off random lines from Balance of Terror. You'd have like the Carrie Fisher in the last Star Wars movie, Rise of Skywalker, I guess. Where it felt like the clips were lifted out of it and they built a scene around it. But I think the fact that it's in the holodeck, I can sort of buy that the holodeck is using, stored audio,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would make sense. Kind of like the Enterprise finale.
Right.
Using the holodeck for history. That was a good one, and that continued the climb. I think we all talked about when Prodigy first came out. There was, varying degrees of it seems really like a kiddie show. It seems much more like a Star Wars type show, and that series literally episode to episode got better. Just every single episode it got better. Yeah, so that was just one on the march of increased quality, and I think I'd say maturity of writing.
Yeah,
I remember really right along with Chuck being thrilled. I mean, I didn't know what episodes the clips were pulling from, but I could tell they were pulling clips. But it was pretty amazing the way that they pulled those clips and worked them in there and made everything work.
Especially given that by that point they had recast Spock and Uhura. So it'd be real easy to just plug in their new guys and promote them.
Yeah.
Rather than going through the trouble of building a scene around those clips.
Yeah.
Right.
Dan says, I love Kobayashi because it's got multiple levels and for me has gotten even better with age.
Okay.
Awesome.
Nice. That's nice.
Whole year-ish.
Yeah.
All right. We're ready to move on?
Yeah.
Because, we'll need to spend some time with the top entries.
Right.
Well, this is the biggest surprise on the thing for me.
Okay.
I'm shocked at how low this came. I mean, it's still in the top 10, but I'm surprised that Picard season 3 comes this low in the top 10, which has crossovers from all of the Next Generation cast and the ship and the bridge and everything, and side characters like what's her name from
Ensign Ro or Ro?
Yeah, well,
Ro,
Ensign Ro. I was thinking of Elizabeth Denny's character.
Oh yeah, Shelby.
Yes.
Shelby, yeah.
Plus we got Tuvok.
Yes.
I mean, it was a crazy season. And I thought hugely successful and really popular with the fans. So, I mean, there's a lot of great episodes in this list, but I'm surprised that Picard season 3,
Yeah.
I think because the season felt like it was just an extension of TNG as opposed to a crossover.
Right.
Okay.
I think so too.
So because like counting 7 of 9 as a crossover in Picard for Voyager, it didn't really seem like a crossover because she's a main character in that series. Right. So I think that's probably what a lot of people were thinking. That's what I was thinking of looking at the list.
And originally, I wasn't even going to put season 3 on the list because I do think of them as main characters in that rather than guest characters, Right. So I don't know. I ended up putting it in, and I don't know.
Okay. Yeah,
Elaine agrees with you. She says what Veronica said.
1 point, Veronica.
Sorry, Clarence. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was just saying I hadn't even considered Picard season 3, but to me, like the whole show is like just an extension. But you can count the ships, the old school ships, as kind of being a crossover in that series as well.
Yeah, that's true.
I was so excited to see the old ships, and I was really expecting like the big finale was going to be all the old ships back in service.
No, that would have been amazing.
Holy cow! I would have loved that so much.
Right. Yeah.
I still wish they had given us a scene of Geordi with a wrench and oil on his face because he's been putting that ship together for 20 years in basically the garage.
Right.
Yeah, I was just disappointed Geordi didn't have to like roll under the blast.
Yes. Of course, he's in his late 60s or something, 70.
Blast doors time.
Yeah. I guess you can't ask a 70-year-old actor to do that stuff. But we can have a stunt double do it. All right. Well, here's another surprise, I think, and that is coming in at number 8. We have the Voyager, the 100th episode flashback. No, that's not the 100th episode. That's the 30th anniversary of the franchise episode. My bad. Timeless is the 100th.
Right.
And it didn't make the list. So sorry. So yeah, we had a whole episode basically set on the on Sulu's ship. And we also got Yeoman. Well, now she's like Commander Rand.
Right.
And that was really nice to see.
Yeah. No, it was,
Young
and
T-
getting George Takei back.
Yes.
And it had only been a few years since Undiscovered Country, but still, I think the shame of that is it got upstaged by Trials and Tribulations.
Absolutely.
Totally.
That's exactly what happened. I think that's it, because you're right. Having George Takei there, and this was young Tuvok, correct? Was on the show.
Tuvok, he was having the dreams of being all these different kids and dropping the girl off the cliff. Does anybody remember the plot of that episode? Because it's like the least memorable part.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was some weird virus or parasite that travels to your brain and was somehow, and it actually hides in your memory so that you can't find it. And man, you're right, because at the intro it was like going back to cavemen falling off cliffs or something like that. It was wild.
Yeah.
I think Trials and Tribulations, I agree with you. I think it 100% stole the air from that show, which is why it's not remembered better.
Yeah. But it's a thrill to get George Takei back and see him in command of the Excelsior. And like I said, it was only a few, like 5 years after Undiscovered Country. And at that time, there were still fans that were clamoring for a Captain Sulu series.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But I also think it gave some justification for Rand. I mean, that's a character that I loved from the first half of the first season, and then she got dropped off the cliff like the kids did, and we never saw her again on the show, and that's such a shame because she was a fantastic character and a really good actress, and it was great to see her back in action.
Yeah. Did you like it, Clarence? Do you remember that episode?
Yeah, I remember it. I mean, I was here for seeing kind of the flashback and seeing what Tuvok was up to back in the day. And of course, the cameo from the characters from TOS was fantastic as well. So yeah, I very much enjoyed it. Enjoyed seeing them. I don't know if I enjoyed the episode so much.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a you get Kang in there too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you get a little scene of Michael and Sarah playing Kang, captaining a Klingon ship.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, he was the Klingon in the Nebula.
Oh, well, holy moly! No, I got to watch it again.
My favorite Klingon until Martok. Kang is just any excuse to see Kang is welcome.
Oh yeah,
agreed on both of those points. Kang, great. Martok is the dude as far as Klingons go, man.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
So does Voyager appear on our list again? Because I want to give a shout out if it doesn't.
I'm so sorry, but that is the only Voyager mention we have.
Okay.
I've got a Voyager one that I want to do too.
Yeah, original Barclay, all the Barclay episodes, he keeps popping up from time to time.
Yeah,
he's kind of the connection back to Federation / Starfleet headquarters of what's going on. He's heading the project to get Voyager home, which you very much see by Endgame. But I just like having that glue of having him on there, and even Troy was on a couple episodes as well with Reginald. So
she was on 3 of the Reggie episodes, and I'll tell you that first one, Pathfinder, is probably my favorite Voyager episode. I mean, it makes me cry at the end every single time I watch it, and I've seen it 100 times, and it still makes me cry at the end. I mean, it's so dumb, but I just love it so much.
No, I agree. It's good, and also because Kate Mulgrew is such a consummate actress, she really she sells it. When they and when you really sit there and think about the fact that she basically says we're no longer alone. That they can talk to people. It is very emotional because people back home don't know if they're dead. They don't know. They still think they're 60 or so years away from getting home, and it just rekindles hope in a lot of important ways. So it's a very powerful scene.
Agreed. And that moment where Admiral Paris talks to his son for the first, oh my God.
Yeah.
Gets me every time. But yeah, man, I love all of those Barclay episodes.
Yeah. And then later on, Tom's like, hey, Dad, guess what? I got demoted again. Hey, Dad, guess what? I got re-promoted again.
Right. Okay. Dan says that the Uhura scene in the flashback script is pretty interesting. I will have to go back and read that. That's interesting. And I think that's it. Other than he says that it was a shame of what happened to Grace Lee Whitney that caused her to leave in the first place.
Yeah, that's very true.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's why I feel like it was such a great moment to have her back. Because she did little cameos in some of the movies, but this was a much more significant role than any of the movies. And so it was just great to see her back in character. I just loved it.
And people forget because she's typically thought of as just the girl and the love interest for Kirk, kind of, sort of. But people forget she also took the helm of the Enterprise in the Naked time. And so that shows she was more than just a woman in a little skirt. She was actually piloting the ship, which again, that was a big deal. And that showed the ability. I love that because it showed that anybody on the bridge could do what needed to be done in an emergency. And it's one of the reasons I still love the OS.
Everybody's cross-trained, but they did that on Next Gen too. If Data got sent on a mission, somebody else filled his spot.
Right.
Everybody is cross-trained to jump into a position.
Right.
But you know, we're getting off topic, I know, but you know, no series since the OS did it as well. When somebody got up from a chair, somebody always sat into that chair like immediately in the OS, and it never quite did it like that again.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think Next Gen was pretty good. When Data would get up, you'd have an extra standing there ready to jump in his chair. Yeah.
Not to take anything away from the original series. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But. All right. So number 6. Wait, no. Sorry, number 7. We have our first Next Generation entry, and that is Relics.
Oh, Relics.
Of course.
Yeah, man. Come on.
I thought that would have been higher.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Relics is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I love that they
good.
I mean, it's great just to come across Scotty. I love that the way he survived into the future is very Scotty. You know, it's very in with that character, and I love that they brought back the original transporter effect for the beaming in.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a good story about a man. You know, it's a parable for growing old. You know, you've reached a point in his life where he feels not useful anymore. You know, all the things he's learned in his life are now pointless. You know, he's a man out of time. And I think there's a lot of people who get to that age, even if they don't travel into the future, who feel that way. The world has changed so much that I spent my life learning all this stuff. Now it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. Wayne says, "Hey, y'all." And then he also says, "It is green."
Data. Yeah.
Green.
Yeah, that's a good episode. The only thing I don't like about the episode is the way Geordi treats Scotty. He's a consummate jerk when he goes off on Scotty and basically tells me he's in its way, and I never understood. It's weird because it's out of character for how Geordi was typically portrayed, and to talk to somebody like that, I thought was disrespectful. Of course, he redeemed himself at the end when he starts telling Scotty, you know, that the old ship, the Jenolan, I think it was, could outrun the Enterprise at Impulse. And then at the end, it's kind of cool when they're telling stories about how he soured the milk of the power feed for that little baby creature in Galaxy's Child. So it redeemed it. And it is a really great episode. And also, real quickly for me, and Clarence, I want to hear what you think about it. I love the scene because it shows such great subtle acting for Patrick Stewart when he finds Scotty reminiscing and sad, and he talks about his old ship, and they just kind of bond together over no matter how good your new ship is, it's always that first one that you love. It's an awesome scene with James Doohan and Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
For me, I thought it was a very good episode. I love the episode. I like again, talking about these reasons that we're bringing these characters together. I think that was one of the better ones. And even something, if you're watching Strange New Worlds or any other Trek show, it's kind of a thing that's been repeated time and time again. So the transporter buffer thing. So I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, just from a writing standpoint, what a brilliant idea that was.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's just smart.
And that was the first time they tried recreating one of the old ships. You know, I mean, they just created a wedge of it, and they sort of cropped it into a clip from the episode. But still, I mean, that was the first time. I mean, it happened several times since then that they recreated the original Enterprise. But I mean, that was the first time that they did it on screen, and that's. I mean, that alone is pretty. Even though it didn't have carpet, they carpeted it to save money. But even so, it's still great to see.
The Facebook user that I believe is still Dan says it was great to see the original series bridge. And he loved Scotty's advice to LaForge about increasing repair time estimates to get a reputation as a miracle worker.
I
love that scene.
I tried to do that at my last job, and I still underestimate. I didn't work. I call it Scottying.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're like, how long will this take you, Veronica? Well, it'll probably take me about 4 hours. Okay, great. And then I'm still not done in 4 hours.
You think you're doing the math wrong.
Yeah.
Dan says relics clearly inspired Mbenga's use of the transporter buffer. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, moving on up the charts. Number 6, we have Lower Decks. Hear All, Trust Nothing. And that is the big DS9 episode.
Yeah.
That was so exciting. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Holy cow, it's incredible.
I was Rutherford. I was running around screaming, being overly excited, right along with Rutherford.
Yeah, and like when Relics came out, for instance, you know, I had just been watching the original series probably a few years myself when I saw it, you know, because that was the time when I was discovering the original series on VHS and watching Next Generation. So it's a different experience, like with Here I'll Trust Nothing, because I watched DS9 30 years ago, and now to see it, you know, come back in some way, you know, so you get that thrill of seeing something that is old, you know, not just intellectually old, but I was watching this show in high school, and to have essentially a new episode, you only get 2 of the original characters on it, but I mean, it works quite well. It's a very DS9 plot.
Yeah, very much. Clarence, what'd you think of it?
I'm on record as not being the biggest Lower Decks fan, but I will say, it is a certain amount of nostalgia when you see the location they went to. And now, for me, I will say that they do so many references to older things from the past in Lower Decks already. Is when we got this episode, which I should have been ecstatic about, which I was, to see Nana Visitor and Armin Shimron, I think his name, come back. It just didn't hit me like it should, because they do so many references to old stuff. It was just kind of like another Lower Decks episode, unfortunately.
Oh,
I could see that. Yeah. Like if Next Gen, if there was an old character from an old show coming back every week, then yeah, you'd be like, okay, who is it this week? I can see that.
I loved at the end that you find out that Kira and Shax were like fought together in the Resistance.
Now, that was
I
cool.
loved that.
That is cool. Yeah. Hey, Clarence, I bet if they'd done the impossible and got Avery Brooks back, you would have loved the episode.
Ooh, baby.
Yeah. Agreed.
Never say never. I'm holding out hope.
But that's like the second coming of Jesus. Forgive me, Lord. So.
Of the emissary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, true. Yeah.
Now, there's a plot to bring somebody back at any time, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan had to, I guess, log out and log back in, and so yes, now we can see who you are.
Yep. You've done
And Matt Sweatman says, "What's difficult about doing a DS9 crossover is how scattered all the characters are." Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true.
I would love to see a new season or new series set on DS9 with some legacy characters and some new characters to see how the ship is running now. I mean, the station is running now, what purpose it's serving, what the crew is like, made up of, you know, newer recruits. And I just think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'd settle for a 1-season show.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, we would complain about it when it ended.
Yes.
Well, that's true.
I'm not buying that.
If they told me up front it's only going to be 1 season, I'd be okay.
Okay. I like that both Quark and Kira had meaningful parts in it, because Lower Decks, they, like, for instance, Tom Paris, I felt was underserved when he came back. You know, if you're going to bring a legacy character back, and Gates McFadden when she was on Prodigy, even because she was playing a holodeck character. You know, I like that they gave Kira and Quark something meaningful to do. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go right ahead.
No. Oh, I totally agree with that. I loved that it was essentially a DS9 episode that the Lower Decks characters came into.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought it was. I really enjoyed it. Okay. Wait. Dan says, "What about a time traveling mission to the past of DS9?" I'd be all right with that too.
Watch it.
Basically, I just want more DS9.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. I'll take DS9 any day of the week. Okay. Number 5. We're to our top 5 now. And this is another one that I thought would do strongly, but I didn't think it would make it this high in the chart. DS9 Blood Oath.
Oh.
The return of Kor, Kang, and Koloth.
Yeah.
Holy moly. That was a big deal at the time.
I
Yeah.
bet. Yeah.
It was great.
It's
Yeah.
a great episode too.
Yeah, and they reinvented those characters to an extent. They're
Yeah.
all very,
Yeah.
I mean, except for Kang. Kang is pretty much Kang. But
Kang.
Kor and Koloth are quite different from the way they appeared in the original series. And really, it could have been
Yeah.
any three Klingons. But the fact that they got those same actors back
Mhm.
Yep.
and had them be those characters is delightful. Because why not?
Yeah. But it was also a really important episode for Terry Farrell
Oh yeah.
because, you know, leading into this part, I mean, this is first season, and leading
Mhm.
into this, you know, she's not that much different than any other science officer on a starship. But I think that putting her in connection with these Klingon characters really opened up her character to a lot of depth and a lot of dimension. And they went from that into lots of other areas with her.
Mhm.
And I think that was a big, big turning point for Dax.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
a lot of
Very-
early Dax episodes are basically writing her like Spock, which didn't
Yeah.
work. She
Yeah.
fell flat.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. And I mean, and what would have happened when Worf came along if they hadn't introduced this Klingon thing seasons earlier? You know, and then it was
Right.
a natural fit that those two would bounce off each other, and they had great chemistry. So yeah, I agree.
Right.
That totally opened her character up.
Yeah. Clarence is one you like?
I'm trying to stretch to remember it.
It was the one where the Klingon they called the albino had killed the sons of Kang, Kor, and Koloth, and Dax goes with them because she, as Curzon, was basically a blood oath Klingon. And then there's this whole. It also has this very interesting thing, which is also it separates DS9 from other Trek, especially TNG, because
Yeah.
basically the conversation is Dax is about to go do some killing for revenge.
Yeah.
And that's kind of not Star Trek.
And I really liked, and they comment on that at the end of the
Mhm.
episode. The other
Mhm.
characters just don't know how to even interact with Dax. They
Right.
don't understand. Even Kira
Yeah.
doesn't understand why Dax did what she did.
Yeah.
It was such a great moment.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's a couple other things, Alan, what you're saying about Terry Farrell and Charles, because Irish Stephen Bear and Michael Pilaris, they talked about the fact, when you said she was like Spock, they talked about the fact that this whole thing with the young woman with the old man's soul basically in her, Curzon, they said it didn't work. It just didn't work. This Dax as advisor to Cisco didn't work. And so they finally said, you know what, let's just keep the name Old Man. And then what they started seeing better was Dax. Really, what opened it up was Dax originally playing whatever the game was, Tonga with the Ferengi.
Right.
And they
Right.
started changing her. And they said the day they told Terry Farrell that they were going to kind of drop this old advisor role to Avery Brooks' character, she said, "Thank you, thank God," because she goes, "I don't know how to play this and get anything out of this role."
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that.
And you could tell
Which
from
is-
watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And in interviews back at that time, so contemporary interviews, Terry Farrell gave every bit of credit to Marina Sirtis and Gates McFadden for constantly, I mean, because they played caretaker characters on Next Gen, and they were
Mm.
constantly sort of fighting the writers to let us do more, give us something more to do. Give us
Nice.
important roles, and you get things like Face of the Enemy and unfortunately the Ghost Candle episode. But and so Terry said if it hadn't been for that, they would not have come up with characters like Kira and Dax for DS9.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Let's see. Dan Leckie is pondering whether the albino was a Klingon or a different species.
I'm going to say part
Um,
Klingon.
I
Yeah.
think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
Like
loved
a
the
hybrid
Klingon.
kind of thing.
Right.
And Michael Phillips says, does Kirk appearing in Strange New Worlds four times count as a crossover? Well, see, okay, well for the poll, we aren't counting recastings.
Right.
So there's a lot of other potential things that we could be talking about, but we sort of we have to narrow the list down a little bit.
Yeah.
So we decided not to include recastings.
Yeah. I think
But
after,
yes, sorry.
I was going to say after Lower Decks runs its course, I think we should do an episode on recastings because that's a whole topic in of itself.
It is.
Yeah.
Very much so. And I
think so,
like that
too.
idea a lot.
I think that right. Agree with that, guys.
All right, we got 15 minutes, but only got 4 episodes to go. Number 7, we get our second Next Generation entry with
Number
Sarek.
7? Not 7. 4? Is that 4?
Well, it's
Four.
number 4. Sorry.
Sarek.
I'm reading the list backwards. Anyway, number 4 is Sarek.
Yeah, Sarek is really good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Really good episode.
and it works really well because Mark Leonard wasn't a main character on the original
Yeah.
series, but he was a very prominent in the fandom, like the lore, you
Right.
know. So bringing him back, and it works really well because you don't have it doesn't feel quite as stunt casting as something like Scotty does. It just feels like
Agreed.
a character who had been a guest star on Star Trek before, but you really got to sort of, Sarek could never appear without Spock, for instance, So
Yeah.
developing him and sort of diving into that character, I think works really well.
Plus, you don't have to come up with some contrivance to get him into
Yeah.
the show. He's still alive in this time
Right.
frame. He is still an active ambassador.
Yeah.
So him showing up on the ship is not unexpected.
Yeah.
Right.
That
Yeah.
episode hits on all cylinders. Go ahead, Clarence.
I was just saying, for me, I think what was really cool about it is Picard being able to know what was going on with his relationship with Spock
Mm.
Yes.
and how that affected him.
Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting.
That
Yeah.
scene where he has Sarek in his head and he's going through all the tempestuous
Yeah.
Vulcan emotion is so
Mm.
amazing.
And I think
It
it's more.
is-
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Keith.
No, go ahead, Charles.
I was gonna say I think it's more meaningful that it's a Vulcan that we know, so
Yes.
that when you see Sarek roll a tear, fans at that point had known Sarek all their lives.
Mhm.
That it's not just a weird Vulcan, but it's like it's Sarek crying. Like that's a
Yeah.
big deal. Go ahead, Keith. I jumped on you when you're.
No. It's this episode hits on all cylinders because it also, and fans say this now, it has some of the greatest acting you've ever seen from Patrick Stewart Allen, as you were saying, when he's doing the mind meld, which is also cool because the mind meld is holding across distance. Sarek is in another room doing the negotiations.
Mhm.
It shows better than some episodes the true closeness between Picard and Crusher. Because she's the one who's with him and he's crying and screaming, I love him. He loves his wife and so forth. It's just an amazingly powerful episode. And Mark Leonard is really, like you said, Charles, he's kind of the unsung. He's really one of the best actors in Trek history, as far as I'm concerned, because he just walked onto that set and he just fit. He just fit. It didn't, like I said, it didn't feel like stunt casting. They asked him to do an incredibly tough role. It's got to be hard when you're older to play a character that's degenerating, that's going to die. And he just sells it.
But that's what makes the episode so special, I think, is that Trek really hadn't done anything like that before. They hadn't explored the deterioration of age, like
Yes.
Alzheimer's and dementia and those kind of things. I mean, that
Not
was
for
just
real, not outside like a Deadly Years kind of a situation where they're going to heal
Right.
in the episode. It was something that a character really was old and really was going through.
yeah. I just thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
And then one last quick thing. There's even a quick scene where Picard talks about the indignity for a Vulcan who's in his mental control. And then he talked about his father and how his father degenerated, because I think he mentioned his father, maybe it was his mother. And that was a great scene where he looked at Data and he said to Data, do you still want to be one of us? Because, Data always wanted to be human. He's like, well, here's part of being human. Do you still want to be this way? And
Right.
Data says something to the effect of, even for me, it's possible that in time my parts will start to erode, but it's not quite the same.
Right.
All right, we got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So, number 3, following on from Sarek, number 3 is Next Generation Unification.
Oh, the
Appearance of Spock.
Unification, parts of it are really, really good.
Yeah, but
On the whole, I don't think they delivered Spock arriving in the Next Generation. You know what I mean? The first episode is a tease, and then the plot's a little bit wonky. But you get some really great scenes with Spock and Data and Spock and Picard, and that's really what you're there for,
Yeah, I agree, Carl. I think everybody was upset back then because Spock showed up in the last scene of the first episode. You're like, what the?
Oh, you knew that's what was going to happen. Come on.
Well, you have found him. What?
Yeah. And it's important. They had to stop those 3 ships from invading Vulcan.
Oh God, dude, that is literally the lamest plot in probably TNG history. 2,000 Romulans are going to take over And it makes no sense because what's her face? What's the name? The commander?
Selah.
Selah.
Mhm.
She even says, "We'll be here, and you can't push us off." I'm like, you're talking Vulcans, right? They would come in there and they will annihilate you. They're Vulcans. It's a goofy plot. But Alan, what you were just saying about the mind meld, it actually works because at the end of the two-parter, it is literally an awesome scene where Spock says, when Kirk was talking about, Picard talked about how Sarek actually valued his arguments with Spock.
Yeah.
And then Spock goes, "You may know my father more than I did. We never chose to meld." And that last scene where Picard says, "And allow me to know the best of him." And they do the mind meld. Now that's a tear-inducing scene. That's a good scene.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
And for those of us who lost our fathers, as I have, my father died back in 2001. Having a chance to know your parent on that level again is just, it's amazing. And then there's all the things you never said to each other. And Spock was full of all the regrets that he never said.
Yeah.
Awesome scene.
Yeah.
Hey, Clarence, what are your thoughts on that one?
I agree with the payoff from Sarek, the Sarek episode. I wonder if they had that in mind when they initially did that with the mind meld in that episode, that Picard would have this insight all these episodes later. What season was this? Do we know?
It's like 6, so it's like
6?
3 years later.
Yeah.
I don't think they were thinking that far.
No, I don't think they were able to plan that far ahead, but it worked out. They used what they had though beautifully.
Yeah.
But I think
Sarek was season 3,
right,
and I'm sure Unification was 6.
right. But this episode really for me is saved by that scene with Spock and Data, where Spock says, "You've been given by design what Vulcans strive for all their lives," and Data says, "Well, you've rejected what I've sought all my life." Yeah. And that's just a great interplay between those characters and really highlights the similarities, but also the differences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was
Charles,
the favorite moment.
With all due respect, Charles, I disagree. I think the greatest thing is when Worf was singing opera.
Okay.
Milota. Let's see. Okay, wait. So, Dan says they take an entire episode to introduce Spock. Even the writers were frustrated by that. I don't think it should have played out any way other than that. I think you had to have that build up and your cliffhanger be Spock walking into the scene. I mean, that's just, that's just how it's got to go.
That's a great cliffhanger.
I think they couldn't afford Nimoy for 2 episodes.
Exactly. They hired him for 1 episode, and that's exactly what it is. It's all about.
I'm with Dan. I watched this back in the day, and I was cussing at the TV the whole episode.
No.
Where's Spock?
But you all, I mean, okay, there. Go ahead.
Michael Phillips says, yes, I like Sarek better than Unification, but any Vulcans in TNG is a good thing since they were so rare.
Agreed.
Yep. Even if one of them was Selah, and what was her name?
Selah was a Romulan.
No.
Half Romulan.
No, the doctor.
Oh, Solar.
Solar. Yeah, I knew it was something really close.
How'd you mix those?
I don't know. All right, we got to move on. Number 2, and this is one that I almost didn't include because it's not a recasting, but it's not the actors coming back to play a part. But I knew if I didn't include it, somebody would gripe about it and somebody would add it anyway, and that is Trials and Tribulations from DS9.
Because it's amazing.
Because it's amazing.
I taped this off TV and I watched it I don't know how many times. It's fantastic. It's just done so well. And it's just perfect.
And even now, 30 years later, you look at it and it looks great.
It's like how?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
How
did they do that?
Yeah. I mean, this is not long after Forrest Gump was like pioneering this technology.
Right.
And it could have looked terrible. And they really they banked hard on this working and made it work. And it's just fantastic. Even now, like you said, look, that scene where they're in the lineup and it's Bashir and O'Brien in the lineup, and it looks like they're there.
Yeah. Yep.
The character who played, is it Arn Darvin?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a weird story behind that. One of the people associated with Deep Space Nine literally bumped into him in a cafe in Hollywood, and they were kind of sort of thinking about it. He literally happened to bump into the guy, like this incredible serendipity, and he fit into the role. He did such a good job for a role that was kind of sort of funny. because he's basically like, it's almost like those bad college movies where they're getting Kirk, and it works. Everything about that episode works. From Dax talking about the old days, the equipment, and then the whole thing where she's in love with Spock, to the end where Sisko does the thing with the Tribbles have come back into the universe. It's just great. Absolutely great episode.
And it's funny now that Dax and Mariner had similar reactions to seeing young Spock when they traveled through time.
Yeah, right.
Or the whole thing with
Elaine,
Dax. So go ahead. Sorry.
Elaine says that she's very much looking forward to watching that one. You are going to love it.
Yeah.
Oh, Elaine, I hope we're not spoiling it for you, but yeah, it's a great episode.
She'll forget.
Dan says that Yesteryear was almost a crossover episode with Sarek and Surak. Wayne says Worf's dismissal of the original series Klingons was priceless. Yes, it was.
Oh,
was
yeah. People still talk about that, Wayne.
Oh, he says, we do not discuss that. Dan says that he watched the new 4K fan upscale of Trials and Tribulations, and it looks great.
Yeah,
awesome.
Some of those fan upscales turned out really well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
And I think it was awesome to see how much they aggrandized those old scientists, even on DS9.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To me, it was far enough removed to where it really felt impactful that they really admired these guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I gotta get one real quick thing in about Trials and Tribulation, real quick. If you remember, at the end of the episode, Dax and Sisko were in the cargo container throwing the Tribbles out one by one as they scanned them.
Yes.
Right? Because they're trying. Yeah. Now, if you notice, they then flash to the original filming with William Shatner, where the Tribbles keep falling on his head. This is the excuse for it. In real life, the truth was the crew were throwing Tribbles at Shatner, not just as a joke, but some of them kind of sort of he would get on their nerves. And so if you watch the original Trouble with Tribbles, William Shatner looks up, kind of like, what the hell is going on here? The crew was throwing Tribbles at him, and that was not in the script. They used it as an excuse to get some blows in on Shatner.
Wow.
But I love that scene where Dax gives the estimation of however many Tribbles there are, and then Spock later says the same thing, and then she looks at Sisko and says,
Yes.
Yeah. I love that K7 is basically the TOS version of DS9. It's a station, bar. It's just perfect.
It's perfect.
And then the time travel guys say that Kirk was a menace, and then when God talks about the date, he goes, "It was a Tuesday." I mean, that was
right.
Okay, we can go on and on about that episode. Sorry.
Yeah, we can. And somebody mentioned those old scientists, and guess what comes in at number 1?
Yeah.
Those old scientists.
Now,
as it should.
Well, part of it's going to be recency bias because everyone's excited about recently watching it. But I will say that that's one of the few, if not the only, crossover that works really well as an episode of both shows. You can watch that. Like if the whole thing was animated, you could watch Boimler interacting with the Strange New Worlds characters, Captain Pike, and it works great. And it works great just if you've never seen Lower Decks, aside from the weird animation stuff getting at the end, that just an ensign from the future comes back in time with all this information that really impacts all the story arcs that we watched on the show over the course of the series. So I think it works really well for both shows. And that's like for instance, Relics, I wouldn't say is a great TOS episode because it's not, you know,
right.
But whereas I think that they really threaded the needle with those old scientists.
Yeah. Clarence, on your show, what was the reaction to that episode?
We loved it. Absolutely. And I think it comes down to the just well written all around, and seeing these actors who, fortunately enough, they cast they're close enough to their drawings or their animated versions to where, although Jack Quaid is pretty tall, but they're close enough to where it really works. So to see him come over and, you know, he didn't make up all these nuances and stuff that Boimler does, but he's having to portray this in live action.
Yeah.
I just think the attention to detail and the clever story writing just made it a special episode.
Yeah. And an improvised moment. I'm sure everybody knows this, but he's in the captain's office and he swings his leg over the saddle and he says Riker as he does it. And Frakes is the director, so he's in the room when he does that, and Frakes just fell out.
I love it.
Because it was
That
a
is
total
great.
improv and he didn't expect it at all.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's great.
The interview when Jack Quaid was describing that was hilarious too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a blast, and it's great that Star Trek's got to the point where we've got well-established crews in different eras where they can do something like this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Agreed.
And it goes back to what every time we talk about I know Clarence might not like Lower Decks as much as we do, but every time we talk about Lower Decks, I have to say the same thing every single time, and that is how much I love that show, and how much the characters work for me. They're just great characters, and so I was so thrilled that they got the chance to play them in live action.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
So before we go, does anybody want to throw out one that wasn't on the countdown, like one that they remember being, something that they enjoyed? Like we talked about the Pathfinder and the other Barclay episodes in Voyager. Anything else come to mind?
I don't know if this counts because I didn't add it to the list, but I'm going to say Dr. Bashir, I presume. Even though it's not the Doctor from Voyager, it's Dr. Zimmerman.
Yeah.
But it's still very much a crossover with Voyager to me. And I think it works really well. And I think it's a really great episode. And I think he was fantastic in it.
I might have actually, I don't think I thought of that one. I might have put it on the list had I remembered it, but it didn't occur to me.
Right.
Yeah,
So maybe you should
that's
have.
a good one.
And
else
I
got
will
one?
say that there wasn't anything on the list that didn't get at least a vote.
Okay.
And to my great surprise, even the final episode of Enterprise got a couple of votes.
Wow.
Wow.
I know,
Wow.
shocking.
It wasn't you and Keith?
No, I did not vote for it.
No.
Even I have my limits on Enterprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me.
But go ahead.
No, I was going to add real quick. Star Trek Discovery season 2, which pretty much is Pike takes over the whole season, so that's a bit of a crossover.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And also Emissary, you see Picard and Emissary.
Sure.
Caretaker, you see Quark and Caretaker as well.
Yeah.
And there's one more that eludes me. But yeah, I'd add those to the list.
I'll say that scene with Picard and Cisco was really good. And also that scene with Quark and Harry Kim was really good too. Who's at the Academy warned you about Ferengi? I want their name.
Oh my gosh. So
and what about Chief O'Brien being on DS9? I know that's somewhat of a crossover, and Worf as well.
Yeah, the other thing that we were discounting were people who became main cast on a different show.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So in that case, I'm sorry, Alan.
No, go ahead.
In that case, we can talk about the crossover of was Data on Deep Space Nine for a moment when Bashir was asking about does his hair grow or not?
No, but Bashir was on.
The
next.
Yeah.
The DS9 was on TNG. Data wasn't on DS9. I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So the Bashir crossover. I thought that was a fascinating scene, and Data said no one had ever asked him that question before.
Yeah.
Something that simple. Does his hair grow?
Yeah, I think I forgot to put that on the list.
And that's fun because that's a young, early Bashir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
He seems like he's 12 years old.
And that question is something you think a 12-year-old would ask.
Yeah.
Does your hair grow?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Clarence, you got any other ones that you can think of that we haven't covered?
What did we miss?
I think that's it for me.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? There was one that I'm shocked didn't get very many and almost no votes. And that is Picard season 1, Nepenthe with Riker and Troy. Holy
yeah,
stuff.
That
That
was
was a great episode.
Yeah.
I think if season 3 hadn't come out, then that
I
would
agree.
be more popular.
Yeah.
I think it's been upstaged since then.
Yes.
You know,
I think
you got
so too.
a better
Yeah.
version.
But it was still such a good episode.
Oh yeah, it
Mhm.
really was.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That's a good one. I agree with that.
All right. Well, that was so much fun. And thank you,
Yeah.
everybody, for commenting. And thank you for the people who voted on the poll. That was a lot of fun. I love doing these polls and these countdown thingies.
Yeah, me
Let me
too.
get just a couple of comments. Dan, like he says, the crossover from the Kelvin verse to the 32nd century of Prime Timeline and Discovery.
Okay. I think he's
Okay.
talking about what was that guy's name? The time guy who was. Oh, it'll come to me. You go ahead.
Okay. Michael Phillips says Enterprise is underrated, but that final episode is not. That is 100% correct.
That's agreed.
Oh, yeah.
Amen to
Dan
that,
reminds
Michael.
us that Morn was in Caretaker also. Absolutely.
Huh?
He says that this was a great show. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone. See you later, Dan. Thanks for joining
Thanks,
us.
Dan. Appreciate
And
it.
Elaine closes us out by saying, "It may be a surprise, but I did not vote for the Enterprise finale. I don't like it, and the ending sucked." There you go.
Controversial opinion,
Yes.
Elaine.
Right?
All right. Well, next week we've got a special presentation. We'll have we'll still be on 8:00 Thursday evening on YouTube, and then the following morning on the audio podcast. But we won't be able to respond to you because we've pre-recorded a segment. We'll be tied up with Dragon Con, so we pre-recorded a discussion of the 50th anniversary of Star Trek: The Animated Series. So. Yeah, everybody. I hope everyone tunes in and likes it. You're still welcome to comment, and the comments will show up but we just won't be able to reply to them because we're in the past.
We're time traveling.
Yes, I'll be very surprised if we reply to you. But so everyone look forward to that next week, and then we'll be back the week after that with a regular live stream talking about the season premiere of Lower Decks.
And with this group, I don't think we need to encourage, but anyone who hasn't watched the animated series, please don't let the old animation stuff stop you. It is really, really good.
Yeah.
Matt Sweatman says, "See you at Dragon Con." Clarence, are you coming to Dragon Con?
No, I have never been to Dragon Con.
What?
Dude, we got to get you there.
Holy cow, man.
Yes, I hope to make it one day.
That'd be awesome. You'll have to let us know when you are because we have to meet up.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
We should have we should have like a Trek podcast meetup.
Yeah.
We
That'd be
should do
awesome.
that. We can't do it this year, obviously, because it's 6 days from now. But next year we should plan that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clarence, we got to talk, man. We got to get you down there. I know places to eat and all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah.
Just let me know I'm there.
All right.
All right.
Waffle
See you
House,
next week
brother.
then.
Yeah. Well,
Waffle House on me, Clarence.
that's the place you know to eat is Waffle House.
Not even talk smack. Come
Oh.
on, Keith.
All right. Well, Clarence,
All right.
thank you for joining us, man. It's
Yeah.
a real pleasure. I appreciate you jumping in with us today. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm always astounded by you guys' Trek knowledge, so it's always fun to be on with you guys.
Oh, you're the sweetest.
Well, where can
So-
people find your podcast?
You can find me at discussingtrek.com. Let's go
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. And Alan, where can people find more of you?
Well, look for my other 2 podcasts, which are Doctor Who A to Z. We've got some reviews of recent Big Finish 60th anniversary episodes that we have just reviewed, and Modern Musicology. We have a couple of shows coming up that I'm really excited about. I think everybody's going to want to hear. It's going to be great. So look for those.
And how about you, Keith?
You can find me on X and Instagram and Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups. I'm never going to get used to that X showing up on my
No.
phone. I'm sorry.
No.
You can find me at XXX.
Because, and I don't think this is a coincidence, that X kind of sort of does remind me of the X that they used to use for movies back in the day. So
The app, mine updated now, and the app looks dirty. I feel embarrassed to click on it. I hope no one's looking.
Oh, that's funny.
Not a nice happy bird anymore.
No. All right, Veronica, where can people find more of you?
I am Doppelwoman on Facebook, kind of promoting our more adult theater puppetry content. So check me out on Facebook, Doppelwoman. And I have also been doing a TikTok where I've been talking about Star Trek and showing some cute episodes of my dog and doing some of the weird TikTok filters. So Doppelwoman 8 on TikTok if you want to check that out.
And where can people find both of us?
FeltNerdy.com.
Yep. And if you're at Dragon Con, look us up in the app. We're in the app now.
Yep, you can
Search for
literally
Felt
search
Nerdy.
for Felt Nerdy. There's other things that come up, but
Put quotes, and then it's just us.
because other people have nerdy in their bio.
Yes.
Oh, I was
The
like,
word
who else
nerd comes up at Dragon Con.
Yes.
would... Shocking.
Right. And where else?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
That's right. And you have a closing for us this week?
Go boldly.
Hey, I'll take it.
that'll work.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for participating.
Bye.
All right. Take care, everybody. See you next time.